Okay, so the main reason why people report problems with their Citizen Eco drives not charging properly is because of the failure to charge these things in full sun. If you're only ever going to rely, if you're going to buy one of these Eco drives and only ever rely on artificial light, then the moment you buy it from the shop or the internet site, and especially an internet site, because there's no guarantee that the person selling has ever kept it properly fully charged under continuous illumination. And if you're only going to rely on artificial light to charge them, they will never ever fully charge properly. And that's why they say in the booklets categorically that the fastest charging times are going to be in full sun, like what we see here. And full sun means full sun. It does not mean sun coming in through a window, because that is definitely reduced intensity. The intensity of sunlight has been reduced if it passes through the glass of a window. Some windows are purposely designed for that too, with coatings on the windows, especially in office buildings. And there's also different types of full sun, which we can talk about full sun during the height of summer or full sun during the height of winter, if you want to average those things out. And the intensity of that sunlight will vary. It will vary on whether it's a cloudless day. Right now, these are under the full sun of a cloudless day. In actual fact, they're still not 100% full sun, because this sunlight, which you can't see here now, is passing through some fly screen insect mesh. So really, I'd have to have them, I'm relying on the fact that it's not going to reduce it that much whatsoever. It will be insignificant. But you need to have them out in the full sun. That will give them a proper charge. So if you have roughly 2 minutes of full sun, that should be good for a couple of days or a day, depending on what model you're looking at. For example, here we've got an Aqualand 200 meter, one of the original type ones. Well, not the original type ones because they weren't solar, but one of the 200 early model 2014 Aqualands. And they have a little power meter on it. You can see it there. So with this power meter on there, you can always gauge whether this watch has got enough power in it, according to the manual, depending on where that needle is on there, that marker is on there, to use it for scuba diving. Obviously not as your sole indicator of depth, but it does give you an indication of whether the watch will be fully functional, depending on where that marker is there. So if it's way below half, the watch is just not going to function as a depth meter. If you're wearing these kinds of watches just because you like a big chunky looking dive watch, then it's really no concern where the power meter is. As long as it's above halfway, you're going to get better longevity out of the watch. Something like this other diving watch here, there's no, and like many other Citizen watches, I believe outside of the Aqualand range, they don't really have a power indicator on them. So you've just got to, as long as you give it, a good dose of full sunlight every day, and make sure it is full sunlight, then you pretty much going to be assured that your battery's going to be as charged as best it can. Obviously, during the night, you're not charging these things 24 hours, and you'd have to have 24 hours of sunlight to, have the power meter reading at maximum all the time, or not sunlight or some other bright intensity light. So at Citizen, they at least they used to put their watches, before sending them out to the jewelers, under 24-hour illumination under a lighting bank, so they can make sure by the time they get to the retailer, they are fully charged up. The other thing you've got to remember is if you leave your watches in full sun, and they obviously say in the manual not to leave them on the dash of a car like in full sun while you go out to, buy your groceries, whatever, is even if I leave them in the full sun here, you should never leave them unattended, because they can still overheat. It's still possible, because as I said earlier on, it depends what full sun we're talking about. Are we talking about full sun behind a window? It can get very, very hot, but the intensity will be low, like a glasshouse kind of effect. And you always have a glasshouse effect even within the watch themselves. They're not, there is an atmosphere within these things, albeit it may not be full of glasshouse gases like, it shouldn't have water vapor in there or carbon dioxide. There'll be a small amount of CO2 when they case these things, unless they're casing them in a, nitrogen atmosphere. Very doubtful of that. It'll be just a dry atmosphere. But they can overheat just leaving them in the sun like this. So it's a good idea to, repeatedly check them. Of course, they will never overheat or get past 37 degrees if you keep them on your wrist in the full sun, because your wrist is going to keep the back of the watch at 37. If the back of the watch is like that, against your wrist, a metal back. But if you've done this to your watch and you've modded it anyway and you put a band like this on there, that will not be cooling against the back of your wrist. Do remember that, because that can be getting pretty hot. You may not tell because this is insulating it from your wrist, insulating it from cooling it, albeit these big type Aqualand, big lots of metal, act as a heat sink on there, but I would not rely on that. And yes, so if you've got a band that goes against the back like that, that will insulate the watch, so be wary of that even on your wrist. And these ones, of course, where it's just straight metal against the back of your hand, will cool naturally from your blood circulation if you are alive. So once again, if you want to get maximum life out of your eco drives, try and get them to see full sunlight, not sunlight through a window, but full sunlight, and that way you'll get maximum longevity of the rechargeable battery system inside these watches. Thanks for watching Bush Camping Tools here.